Now that I've got the new master cylinder rebuilt, it's time to take this old one off here. So we'll walk you through the process of getting this thing disassembled. I like to start with taking the brake line off first. That way everything is mounted and I have some leverage to be able to unloosen or loosen up this brake line. So we're going to start with that first. They're typically a 3/8 inch wrench. This one is a little marred up. I'm sure it's been on and off a few times. With that loosened, we're going to let that hang there. Next, we want to work on the switch housing. That's a 5/32 Allen. Actually, take that back. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. I want to take the mirror off first. So that mirror actually has a 9/16 nut on it. It's not the right way to mount a mirror, but it has been done. So what I like to do is I like to put a wrench on the bottom nut and I actually like to spin the mirror. So what that does is it loosens it up enough to be able to spin the nut off the rest of the way, because there's not a lot of working room in there. Sometimes if you have to work the mirror back and forth just to get it to unthread, it's a good way to do it. I did spray that with a little penetrating lube the other day and I let it sit. And obviously that thing is really rusty and gross. Probably the stock original mirror that came with this bike in 1979. Now the next thing I should do is actually remove this clip off the bottom here, and I can show you that clip once I get it off. Again, using the handlebars as leverage here, being that this is all mounted. It's got a little C-clip here. I'm not sure if you guys can see that in the camera or not. It's easier to get that out when it's still mounted. So once that's removed, then you can push the pin up. And sometimes these things get stuck. So it seems to be moving okay. And now that that's out of the way, be careful, there's a little washer on the back side of that. Set those pieces away and then we'll remove this handle. Now you want to be careful because there's this little guy in here and this has got a little hole in it, and that's what actually pushes on the plunger that makes contact with that master cylinder on the inside. So we'll take that out, and as you can see, that little felt pad came out with it. It's got a washer on there and that felt piece. We don't need any of those anymore. Those are no good. But this piece here is actually in good shape. It's got minimal rust on it. Oxidation, I should say. It's not rust. It just oxidized a little bit. So we'll clean that up. We'll set that aside. Now this is ready to be removed. So we'll go back and grab our 5/32. You want to be careful on these things. Sometimes they're rusted in place and these can round out real easily. And again, I pre-soaked these a couple days ago. I knew I'd be working on this pretty quick here since I had all the parts. And sometimes if you've got the time to go ahead and spray things down with a little penetrating lubricant, that helps out a lot. Let it sit for a little while. A lot of these old stubborn parts will start to move again. pull that cover and I'm going to set it aside. I probably should pull the screws out of it, but I'm going to leave them in there for now. And what I'm seeing down in this master cylinder is the plunger inside of here is actually stuck. I'm not sure if you can see that in there, but it is stuck down. So that's the reason why it wasn't pumping any fluid. It wasn't making any contact at all, so nothing was actually happening when we were pumping the brakes. So this is a rebuildable unit. It's not in that bad a shape. It's a Japanese aftermarket job, so it's something that can be fixed. We'll go ahead and we'll set this aside. One of the parts I didn't think I'd be reusing was this little adapter that was actually on the other master cylinder. But based on the brake line size, I see that I do need this size for the replacement cylinder that I've got. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. Okay, now with everything cleaned up and ready to go, this is ready for reassembly. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the master cylinder back in place, back where it should go. And then we're going to grab our cover and start putting that back on. And I'm just going to finger tighten everything right now. I don't want to snug anything down just yet. Not quite ready for that. Give it a little bit of a snug here just to keep everything kind of in place. And what I'm doing is I'm looking at both of the handlebars to see if these are pretty even, and they look like they are. I'd like to keep everything looking proper. That looks level to my eye, and of course you can adjust this after the fact. So I'm going to go ahead and snug this down for now. Of course you want to be careful with this stuff. It's just aluminum, and a lot of it's old and brittle. You don't want to go crazy on tightening these things because they do strip out really fast. All right, with all of those snugged in place, the next step is going to be getting the plunger put in here. So this guy here that came out with a little spring assembly, I did reuse the washer that was on the outside. So we're just going to slide that right into place. It's going to go right back where it was, and that's going to set there for just a second. Next, we'll grab our brake lever. And of course, we want to line up that hole that's in the pin here. That actually is what contacts that plunger. Once you have those lined up nicely, you'll push it into place. And we'll slide that retaining pin back in. And then that's in place, and we'll just go ahead and give it a squeeze just to make sure it sounds like it's doing something. I'm not sure if you can hear it on the camera, but I can hear it actually sucking air as I push the lever in and as I let it out. And if you look down into the bore of the master cylinder here, you can see everything moving just like it should. So I'm excited to see this move again. With that being said, we're going to put on our retaining clips that go on the bottom here. That way everything's locked in place. We'll start out with our little washer first. And then next we'll have our small C-clip. All right, with everything locked in place now, we'll go ahead and we'll hook up that brake line. First, we want to start out with the adapter. This is the part that I cleaned. So we'll go ahead and we'll thread that in by hand just to get it to start nicely. Once you've got it started a little bit, we'll tighten it up with a 1/2-inch wrench. Okay, with that tightened, we'll go ahead and hook up the brake line. Of course, we'll tighten that down with a 3/8 wrench. With everything tightened, the next step is to add brake fluid. This is not a new container of .5, but I did open it recently, so I feel like it's still pretty good. So we're going to fill up the master cylinder here. That'll bubble a little bit. Then we're going to start working the fluid through the system. And as I'm doing that, you can see it actually taking fluid into the system and then bubbling on return. We'll fill that back up, top it off again. We'll start working it back into the system. Now that we've got fluid in the reservoir here and we've got fluid into the lines, we're going to get ready to bleed the brakes. I believe everything is pretty good here. It may be leaking at this fitting, I'm not quite sure yet. But first things first, we'll put this diaphragm in place. We'll get everything buttoned up here. Then we'll go ahead and tighten that down a little better. All right, I've got the reservoir cap tightened down. So one of the things I want to do is I want to try to snug up this brake line. So I'm actually going to hold the adapter in place and grab my 3/8 wrench and see if I can give it a couple extra turns just to get this thing tightened up just right. You don't want to have any air leaks, because unfortunately if you do, you'll have no brakes, and that's always a bad thing. If we're going through the process of rebuilding this thing, we don't want to end up with a failure somewhere, and eventually this brake line is going to have to be replaced. But for now, like I said, I want to get this bike roadworthy and be able to take it on a run if I can, depending on the weather, of course. It's snowing like crazy today. Anyway, we'll move from this to bleeding the caliper. Of course, this part of the project is always fun when you're by yourself. At least I have enough arm room to be able to reach what I need to be able to bleed this properly. What I've done too is I've created a little bit of a barrier here. I'll add another drip rag here just in case. I'm trying not to get this .5 everywhere if I can help it. I can of course replace everything again, but if I don't have to, I don't want to. So what we're going to do is we're going to pump this. Of course, then we're going to hold the brake in. And we're going to see what we get. Just air. Whole lot of air. Pump it a few more times, open it up. Just air. Starting to get a little pressure. Hold it. A lot more air. Pump it and hold it again. More air. With that, we're going to check this master cylinder to see what's in it, see what kind of fluid we have left. One of the things I realized is there's no good height on a lift to do this, at least not for me. I'm 6 foot tall and I'm still kind of reaching above my head, above where I want to be with this. And we of course have gotten most of the fluid out of the system. So with that being drained down as far as it is, we're going to fill it back up. Now with the master cylinder filled back up, we're going to go back through the process of bleeding this brake. So we're going to pump it a few times. And I can feel fluid moving through the system. We're going to hold it, and we're going to open the bleeder. And we're back to air. We'll hold it. Still getting air. Do that one more time and see what we get. Hold it. Air. All right, we're going to check that master just to see what we've got in there. I'm going to run quite a bit of fluid through here since the system was completely dry. There was nothing in the master cylinder. I did let all that drain out. Shouldn't have been anything in the line because it did hang for about a good week, so there was nothing in there either. So we're actually filling this up completely. At this point, it's almost like a brand new system. And again, we've taken quite a bit of the fluid out, so we'll fill this back up. Now with it refilled again, cap put back on, we'll go back to pumping the brakes. And I can feel it getting tighter. I can hear the caliper starting to work as well. So now I'm holding that brake all the way in. We're going to check and see what we get here. Oop, we got a little bit more air and fluid this time. So that's a good sign. That's what we want. I'm going to grab another rag just in case. Get myself out of the splash zone here. That way I'm protecting everything. So nothing's getting .5 on it. I don't want to get it on the front tire. That of course makes a very slippery spot and this stuff doesn't come off. So we'll pump this up again. It's getting really tight. We'll hold it. We're going to open that valve one more time, that bleeder one more time. Got some air and a nice steady stream that time. We're going to do it again. Now the brake lever pulls about halfway, which is good. So now that it's halfway, we're going to squeeze it as hard as I can. And then we're going to open this bleeder one more time. We did get more air. It did launch quite a ways. We're going to pump it and hold it. And now we're pulling about 3/8 of the way in, which is good. We want a nice, easy pull. I don't want to pull it clear to the handlebars, and I want it about here. But we're going to bleed this one more time just to see we got all the air out. And that was solid fluid. I'll lock that bleeder in place. That's perfect. That's what we want. So with the bleeder locked in place, we'll go ahead and we'll remove our rags. And we're going to check that master cylinder one more time. We used about half the fluid this time, so I'm going to top this off the rest of the way. With the master cylinder filled back up, what we're going to do is we're going to squeeze the brake just to see what kind of lever pressure we've got here. It feels really good. It's pulling a little bit further than halfway. It's probably actually right about halfway. It's a little more than I want it to pull, but it does build up really good pressure. I can hear it in the caliper. One of the tools that's super handy is a pressure bleeder, and unfortunately I don't have one yet. That's something I know I need to invest in. It's on the list of things to buy this year. So with that said, I'm doing it the old-fashioned way. And if you don't have one either, this is a good way to, bleach brakes if you don't know how. I hope you guys found this video informative. I hope you guys like the content that I'm putting out. Of course, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe, please. That way you can see the new videos that I put out. I'm trying to do more content this year. I'm trying to put out more informational videos to show you guys, the process of doing things like brakes or what have you. I know with this bike, now that it's got brakes, the next step is to get the carb cleaned, get it running, and then hopefully ride it depending on what the weather does. I do believe that I'm going to change the paint set. I do have a black paint set that I'd like to put on this bike. And then I do have a 2-to-1 exhaust that I want to put on this, and I also have a kicker that I want to put on. I want to move this from electric start only to electric and kick start. So I'll show you guys those processes as well. And of course, if you want to be a part of that, subscribe to the channel so you can see those things when they come out. As always, guys, I appreciate you watching. Feel free to leave a comment below. Tell me how I'm doing. Tell me how I'm doing it right or doing it wrong. I appreciate it all. Anyway, we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.